Good evening, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. This is that D&D podcast, and we're back for another edition of our improbable interviews. Before we introduce our special guest, we're going to go around and introduce ourselves so you know who is doing the interrogation. We will be playing good cop, bad cop, and serial cop, respectively. Um, my name's Aaron. She, her pronouns. If you've frequented any of our stuff, you've probably seen this face or heard this voice. Um, Go, Mike.
Hey y'all, I'm Mike Jedarkson Berard, he, him pronouns. I'm going to be muted because I got puppies running around at the moment, so I'm trying to keep them not super loud, but super excited to be here. And yeah, I'm here a lot.
I'm Renee, she pronouns, and I'm not here in the face a lot, but you all know my wonderful work that gets released every Monday, fully edited and sometimes commentated.
Yes. Renee is our trustworthy editor, long-suffering.
It's amazing how loud keyboards can be. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Just a little bit. Also, Renee, happy birthday!
Yes, my birthday.
I'm going to embarrass you
Oh,
on
happy
stream.
birthday.
Yay.
Happy birthday.
And who better to introduce Jason than Jason? So, go for it.
Yeah, my name is Jason, he, him pronouns. I'm Jason Morningstar of Bully Pulpit Games. And I am a game designer and I live and work in Durham, North Carolina. And I'm probably best known for my game Fiasco.
Which, if you are a listener of our stuff, you have heard us have fiascos a few times. It is, if you haven't played it, we really recommend it. It's real good fun.
I think the podcast is airing one right now too, right?
Yes, we actually are, which is really, Renee, you did a good job on that, working out the scheduling.
Good
I was like, what
timing.
am I going to do? And I'm like, wait a minute. I know.
Wait a minute.
Okay, so let's dive into some questions.
Okay.
Do you have like an absolute favorite mechanic or line of text or anything like that that you've put into Fiasco?
That's a great question. And I think the answer is no, but it's also yes, because the thing that I love the most about Fiasco and that I think is that I'm proudest of is that it leaves a lot of things out. And the things it leaves out are very deliberate. For example, nowhere in Fiasco does it tell you who gets to say what when. That's something that your group has to sort of create a social contract around yourselves. And I feel that you're probably better suited for that than I am. And so it's a game that I feel like communicates as much through what it's not putting on the page as it does through the actual written instructions. So that's how I would answer that. I'm very proud of that.
It makes a lot of sense. Do you have any sources of creative inspiration within arm's reach of you right now?
Yeah. Yes. Is that like a challenge?
Lay it on me. What you got?
Well, I've got the book that I'm currently reading, which is Emily Cockaine's Hubbub, Filth, Noise, and Stench in England, within arm's reach, which is very inspiring. Super good book that's teaching me a lot about early modern England that I didn't know. What else is right within arm's reach? I have my friend Crin's game, Everyone's a Suspect, within arm's reach, which is a brilliant game that I love very much. I have a bunch of weird pseudo tarot cards that I made for a project that I'm working on, a LARP project that I'm working on with Lizzie Stark, that are all pulled. All the images from those are pulled from a herbal encyclopedia from 1491. Let's see, what else have I got? I've got a weird piece of machinery that stamps numbers sequentially. Yeah, it's a stampy thing that it just stamps numbers from 0 to 9,999, and I'm refurbishing that currently. very inspirational. I'm sure I'll use that for something. I've got some notes for this is notes for a relationship map for me sketching out the relationships in a very complicated Elizabethan revenge tragedy that I needed to rewrite, and I could go on. Like this is my life. I'm completely surrounded by interesting things.
That's real rad. I saw that you said the cards made with the herbal encyclopedia, and Renee's face, she was just like,
I'm like,
yes.
what? That's
It's
really intriguing to me.
oh yeah, it's Libra Sanitatis, and it's a pretty well-known herbal medical treatise, and also kind of an encyclopedia of of botany and fauna. So there's lots of great images in it, and it's been digitized in a number of different places. So there's lots of sources for it. It's pretty fun. So we have a deck of cards that you use to build characters and also to sort of adjudicate adversity and also to tell fortunes in the game. And the suits are hounds, flowers, fish, and what's the fourth suit? Fish, flowers, hounds, and no, one other suit. Anyway, so there's all these suits and all these crazy cards. It's super neat. I'm really excited about it, and it's really fun to try to tell fortunes with it, to use it to parse sort of divination. It's very fun. I'm a fan.
That sounds really rad.
Oh, I got to show you a card. I can't stand it. Hold on.
Please do.
Let me get the cards out. It'll take a minute. Let's keep talking, and we'll return to it.
Okay.
Ask me another question. I dare you.
Any of y'all have one on the top of your minds?
Well, yeah, I am actually interested. Do you have any advice that you would give to somebody who is looking into breaking into making games and getting them seen by others?
So, advice for someone who wants to make games and have those games seen by others. That's your request?
Yeah.
I have advice that's a common question that I get, and the advice that I give is pretty straightforward, and that is to embrace mutualism, to find a community of practice that resonates with you, and that happily kind of getting easier. There are lots of communities that are interested in design and interested in conversation around design and publishing. So find the community that works for you, whatever that might be, and then help other people. Don't expect reciprocity. Do it with enthusiasm and usefulness and an open heart, and typically that's going to lead to deeper relationships. And when it comes time for you to share your own work, there'll be people who are eager to help you as well. And that works for me, and I see it working for other people as well. So that's one thing that I recommend. In some ways, it's kind of it's an easy time. In some ways, it's a very difficult time because the sort of the marketplace, both the physical marketplace, but also the marketplace of ideas, are pretty saturated right now. There's lots of people who are using the tools that have been completely democratized, which is very exciting over the last 10 and 15 years to see it get easier and easier to produce and create both physical objects and to share design ideas. We're at a point now where it's pretty easy to do that, and so there's a flourishing ecosystem of design in various sort of ways and different kinds of expression. So that's cool and that's great, but it also means that it's harder for your voice to be heard.
Yeah. Definitely.
So it's an interesting thing, and I'm kind of old school. I got into this at a time when it was very easy to differentiate yourself and to be heard if you wanted to be part of a larger community. And I think that's maybe more difficult now, but in some ways also easier to at least disseminate your work. So maybe it's a wash. I don't know. I hope that's a useful answer. I think being kind and helpful to others is never a bad idea.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't turn into creating a community around your game, at least you were kind and helpful to others. So give it a try. That's kind of where I'm at. Okay, I got my cards out. I found them. Let me show you a couple. Here is the Empress of Birds. Let's see if we can show you the Empress of Birds.
Oh, neat.
Right? So the Empress of Birds is kind of a creepy
It's like a
woman-headed bird
a
that's
harpy.
killing somebody. Yeah, kind of a harpy situation.
Yeah.
And then some of them are real prosaic. There's a numeric set. This is a Two of Hounds. And but there's also like a major arcana that has wild stuff like the trio, which is 3 people in a cockle shell.
Oh,
right?
neat.
Or the outlaw. Or judgment, right? Judgment. This is the first time
hey.
I've shown off these cards too. So
These are
Those are
very
super
cool,
cool.
and the artwork is very similar to like the Flemish tapestries and like clothing illustrations, like from that time period. That's very cool.
yeah, it's nice that they're and pulling it all from one corpus means that they're very consistent.
Yeah.
This particular book is Italian, and so it's like people are dressed the same, and they have the same affect, which is really fun. It's fun to work with.
That's pretty rad.
Yeah. So our goal is to actually create a series of games that all use those cards as sort of a common thread. So we're submitting a game to Festival, which is a Danish game convention that has a contest every year. And that's going to be like a 4-hour game. And we're also writing a much longer game called The Player's Tale, which is going to be a weekend-long sort of immersive LARP.
Oh, nice.
And they'll use the same tools, but of course in totally different ways.
Yeah. Well, that's really rad.
Thanks.
So one of our big goals as a podcast and, with the little small community that we have is we've been pushing for inclusivity, making everybody feel welcome at the table, making sure that there's a place for all ideas and viewpoints and backgrounds and everything. What do you think that we can do as a whole, like all the nerds of different, dice or cards or pure imagination or whatever you are? What can we do to make all that more inclusive so that everybody feels welcome?
It's a good question, and in some ways, I don't know that I'm the right guy to answer that because I am. I don't feel like I'm a gatekeeper, but I certainly represent the cohort that has the easiest time navigating our social spaces. And I'm aware of that. And I think one thing that we can do collectively is to make sure that people like me are aware of their privilege and the ease at which they navigate these spaces and to make room for other people. Because I don't think that it's the people who are marginalized who are necessarily causing their own difficulties. I think it's probably the larger culture or the culture at large that within the hobby that's causing those difficulties.
Yeah.
So that's something that I try to be aware of, and I try to be sensitive to the impact that I have and the opportunities that I can create to make spaces more welcoming or safer or more inclusive more broadly. And some of that is, I guess, soft influence, and some of it is very overt policy kinds of influence as well.
Yeah. Ignore the hiccups.
I thought maybe you were laughing at my answer.
No, I hiccups when nervous. It's a fun feature.
No interviews without hiccups.
So far,
Truth.
yes, true.
Truth.
So, one of the big things you've got going on right now is the Kickstarter
Yeah.
for the new Fiasco.
Hmm. That's
wanna,
coming.
Yeah, you want to talk a little bit about that? How's it different from what's already out there? All that kind of stuff.
Have all three of you played Fiasco?
Oh yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Well, when you play the new version, it'll be very similar. The changes that we made are not to the sort of thematic or narrative structure of the game. They're all to pieces that we looked at and over 10 years have sort of seen things that worked and don't work and things that were sort of ripe for improvement. And that's really pretty small pieces for the most part. Some of it is things that became conventional wisdom but was never recorded as rules are now rules, and that's again, it's really simple stuff. Like if you have a 4-player game, have 2 needs and don't have them adjacent to each other. That's the way I've played it since the beginning, but it didn't make it into the rules, and it's a very slight improvement that makes the game better. Because it means that you have 2 balanced needs that every character touches.
That makes a lot of
And
sense.
and 2 needs is better than 1 need, 2 objects, and a location, because those things are not as interesting as needs. They don't drive the collective story as much as a need does. So now the rules say if you're playing with 4, 2 needs, don't let them be adjacent. Super simple, but it's received wisdom over many, many thousands of plays of the game, and we just know that it works great. So there's some of that stuff. We also realized, and have realized for a long time, that the sort of physical affordances of the game are kind of a barrier to entry, in that you buy this book and then you need to get 20 dice in 2 different colors, and you've got to have index cards and Sharpies. There's a lot of stuff that, like indie game nerds naturally have. And that's honestly who we wrote the game for. But the universe of people for whom Fiasco is super fun, or has the potential to be super fun, is much bigger than like indie game nerds. And what we have found over the years is that it causes confusion or consternation pretty regularly, particularly in sort of non-nerdy retail. So our books end up in places, sometimes surprising places, and then we get messages from people who say, I bought your game, but I don't think it's all here. I don't understand. There's other things that I need, but I don't even know where to get them. Where do I get 20 dice in 2 different colors? And those are people that I care about. I want those people to have a successful experience,
Absolutely.
not a negative one. And I want them to engage with my game joyfully instead of after a struggle. So the dice are gone. There are no dice in Fiasco anymore. They're still in the classic edition of the game, which is not going to go out of print because it meets a very particular need that I've basically just described. But the new edition of the game is going to come in a box. Everything's card-based. You can open the box and play it right away. The things that you used to do with dice now are done with cards. So you have positive and negative outcomes, which are on cards. Here's another subtle thing that changed. So it used to be black and white. Now it's blue and red because we want to sort of remove implicit bias as much as we can. So it's that's a real small thing, and people aren't going to notice, but it was brought to our attention, and we corrected it. And there's a lot of little things like that throughout the game. So you've got positive and negative outcome cards. You flip them over at the tilt, and they give you your tilt elements. All of the cards on the backs have surnames and personal names, so that if you don't want to think about it, you're given lots of options for creating character names right there. We really focused on making sure that everything you needed was in the box, and that you only had to think about telling the story together, which is a pretty big difference. If you think about sort of the social footprint and the handling time of the original game, there's a lot of stuff you got to think about other than just like, what is my guy going to do to get in trouble? Right. And we did our best to remove a lot of that stuff, which I'm very happy about.
I think that's such a neat thing to bring up, almost kind of inadvertently, because it's so easy when you're already immersed in a certain way of playing games, it would never would have occurred to me. Like, some people may not know how to get a pile of dice somewhere, but that's such an important, it seems like a small step, but it's a super important step to opening the game up to people who aren't already like in this circle of doing things.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's really easy to forget when you're working on anything, but in this case specifically games. When you're used to playing them, you don't always think about it from the perspective of someone who's never done that before.
Yeah.
That's true. And there's tons of people for whom role playing would be such a beautiful hobby. And I feel like even the new simplified version of Fiasco is still kind of a heavy lift for someone to just, for many people, if you just handed them the box and said, do this thing. And one of the things that I'm really interested in and want to do is find ways to universalize these experiences, make them more approachable and more accessible, which also I feel in a way is an oblique into your question about accessibility and welcoming people on the margins into a community as well, because games about killing people don't necessarily go over well in communities for whom that's lived experience, for example.
Absolutely.
Right.
So I think there are lots of really good opportunities, and it's such a powerful form. I mean, you can experience and create empathy. You can try identities. It's such a beautiful activity more broadly. Role playing is beautiful for so many modes of self-expression and actualization.
Yeah.
But it's also completely opaque for reasons like that. Like, oh, well, go get 20 dice in 2 different colors. Well, okay. Go find a die that has to have 20 sides. And while you're at it, find a die that also has 12 sides. And you're going to need 4 of those. It's just, it's a lot. And it's not like somebody who's sufficiently motivated can't do that, because of course they can.
Right.
But you might just have that one moment, right? That one moment of interaction, and they'll just be like, I don't have time. I don't have the energy or the money to put into this to see if it's for me.
Yeah. And there's also just kind of, I feel like there's this inherent intimidation factor if you have I went on 7 different office supply trips just to get the supplies for this one game, as opposed to, okay, I have 3 different games. All you need is pick one of these that sounds interesting and this deck of cards, and we can play. It's all in this box. We are good to go. Yep. I feel like it makes it a lot more accessible for people, and it's something that you don't have to buy stuff you're not going to use. Like, if you're trying to get somebody to play this game, why would you ask them to buy 20 dice if I'm never going to use 20 dice for anything else in my life?
Right. And for us, that's just an investment in future games, because we know we'll use 20 dice. It's just a thing.
Right.
But I didn't want to assume. And, my experience is that you can't assume that.
Absolutely.
Unless you want to design for a very insular community and you're having a conversation with people that you know very well. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's not what I want anymore. I mean, I kind of...
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question, kind of going from thinking about how you've revised, I guess, this game to have a broader audience. What is it that makes you start thinking about a game? Okay, so I'm an English teacher, and so I know that writers often have certain habits that they start writing with. Like, they think of an image, or they think of a character, or they think of a conflict. What is it that makes you think of how to begin a game, and where do you take it through the story or through the process?
That's a great question, Renee. And I think that the answer to that is different for everybody. So I can tell you how it works for me.
Right.
But obviously different people do it in different ways. For me, I'm a really curious person, and I'm interested in lots of things, and I'm constantly taking in new information. And every once in a while, something will strike me as being particularly resonant or particularly powerful or interesting in a way that I want to share. And I don't know. I don't know whether games in general are applied or fine art, but they're definitely art to me, and they're a method of expression, and it's how I express myself. It's my art. So sometimes I have something that I just need to say, and sometimes it's political. Sometimes, well, I mean, it's always political, right? But sometimes it's explicitly political, and sometimes it's not. But those things will sort of assert themselves or sort of grab me by the lapels and be, this is something you need to address. And often those become a sort of half-formed shells of a thing that get put in a drawer for a while, and they percolate. It's pretty unusual for me to be like, oh wow, I just was inspired by this book I read. I want to make a game that reflects on that or comments on that. I'm going to write that game, and then that game is done. That's very rare for me. Usually what happens is I'll get inspired and excited. I'll do some brainstorming and write some notes down and bounce it around with some trusted friends, and then it won't work and I won't know how to do it, and I'll put it away. And then it'll sort of it'll either reassert itself later, or I'll give up on it and use those parts. Those parts will be incorporated into something else, and I can give you examples of that too. Like the bones of failed projects are in all of my games in really interesting ways, and I can tell funny stories about that. Or it'll just come back, and then it'll be the right time. So like with Night Witches, that's exactly what happened. I learned the history and got excited about it, and I wanted to play it. You know, I wanted to play it with my friends, and it didn't exist. So I wrote a game in 2007. And it was terrible. It was just a bad game, and I put it away because I just didn't have the tools to tell that story. And it took a long time. And then in like 2011 or 2012, I played Apocalypse World for the first time, and was like, yeah, this is it. This is exactly what I. These are the. This is the technology that solves the problems I had and didn't know how to fix. So like that. That's sort of my process, I guess. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does.
Okay.
And I kind of like that. I think I know particularly with my students, when they have ideas, sometimes they're afraid to put them away. Like, you know, they're afraid to say, okay, I don't know how to work with this idea right now, and I'm going to put it away. So, you know, I think that's something that you have to learn. It's important to learn how to do. Like, I have this idea and I've worked on it, but I don't know where it's going, so I'm going to leave it and come back later. You know, or
Yeah,
even
that's
be afraid to tear it apart and use it for other stuff. Like that can be really intimidating sometimes. Like it's the thing you created.
And it's I see it in games pretty often. Someone who will work really hard on a school project, sort of obsessively, and you know, determined not to do anything else until they finish whatever the thing is. And that's not how I work. I think some people can be successful that way, but I can't have 2 or 3 different things going on at the time so that I can put something down, put it away, maybe forever, and then shift my focus to something that's productive. I find that just leads to better outcomes than kind of focusing on one thing, and 7 years later you've finally got the version that you're happy with. And yeah.
So you had mentioned Night Wishes. Was there like what was the inciting incident that got you invested or interested in writing that game? We mentioned. Sorry, that's the question.
No, it's a good question. I actually read Kazimira Kadam's PhD thesis, which was her first person interview with survivors of that. And I read that, and then I was like, what the hell? I didn't even know that people existed. And that opened up a whole world of other sort of primary and secondary sources around them that I just devoured because I was interested. I think I'm motivated a lot by history. It's just sort of how it works. So I just got excited about that and thought this should be a game. We should be able to play these women, and it's a way to teach people their story and sort of draw their stories around that, and also it's a way to like examine endemic sexism, for example, in a way that a bunch of dudes who wouldn't play a game about endemic sexism might see a way themselves into, kind of sneakily, which I think is great. You could be like, you want to play a bunch of awesome pilots who are bombing the Nazis? Yes, I do. And then they're hooked, and then you can play a game and maybe they can learn something. So yeah, it was exciting at many levels once I got into the project. But yeah, it started just reading a book, reading a monograph.
Ash in the chat has a question. She said, do you have a toolbox of parts that you use for designing games? And do you have any suggestions of places to look for parts to use for designing games for other people?
Thank you for that question, Ash. And I think I'm going to meet you at Big Bad Con. I'm looking forward to it. Shout out to Ash. So, kind of, I guess. I don't know. There are reliable sort of engines that I lazily fall back on all the time. And when they don't work for me, sometimes that's an indication that I need to do some custom design work around the project. But most of the time, like in my homebrew, if I'm excited about an idea, we'll just play Archipelago, and that's a game I love. It's like a pickup truck of a role-playing game. It'll do pretty much whatever you want, and it's easy to hack and modify. And so, like, as an example, my friends challenged me. They said, we know you hate superheroes, which is true. So please run a superhero game for us because we want to laugh at you. And I challenge accepted. Let's do it. You will be sad. You will be sad that you've challenged me in this way. And they were, because I thought about it and was like, well, cool. So superheroes, right? Let's make a game about superheroes during the Iran-Iraq War in 1980 and 1981, and all the superheroes are actually like being possessed by the old Persian god Jamina, right? And so that's the game we played, and I instantly turned to Archipelago as the sort of core behind that, and then built on top of that, built some cool stuff on top of that, specifically for that. It's murderously specific. It really bums me out because I would love to share it and eventually publish it, but like nobody wants to play that game, or maybe 6 people want to play that game. So I don't know if it'll happen. But that's the kind of thing I normally will do. Like if there's a game that will work for what I want, I'll just use that. I don't feel the need to build something from scratch if there's something that works great that I love that makes me happy. Or if I can hack something into a form that works, I'm totally okay with doing that. That's also game design. Scenario design is game design. I as little as possible because I'm very lazy. It's true. So I hope that answers your question. Use the tools you have that you like. And if you can use those and still have a fun time, then stop making a new game because you've already done it.
She says that's amazing and she wants to play that game. And also, that's a hell of an elevator pitch. So do I. So if you bring it to Big Bad Con, we will play that game.
You want to play my Children of Shine game? Okay. I'll bring it. It has custom cards in Farsi. You will regret. You will. Yeah. Because you don't understand your powers. Like you're being you're not, it's not like you're possessed, but you're sharing your body with a figure of myth, and the figures out of myth don't know anything about the 20th century. They don't understand the sort of the ground truth of this genocidal war that's happening in Iran. So they're all weird and doing crazy stuff with you, but at the same time they're like creatures of myth, so like they can do amazing things. So there's all this uncertainty around. They kind of flex. So you need to have this ongoing conversation with the mythological being that's basically possessed you, and it's cool. It's an interesting thing. It's pretty fun.
That sounds rad as hell. This seems like a late night huddled around the table, have a few drinks, and like get super into the game sort of game.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. My friends know a lot about the history of Iran. And they were very sad. They didn't get to be cool superheroes at all.
That's a hell of a monkey paw turn on the I want to be a superhero.
Yep. I gave them exactly what they asked for.
Oh man.
Wow.
So
Yeah, it's great.
sorry, Aaron. I'm a quick left turn.
No, go for
So
it.
I gotta ask because that's very much like that feels almost like a love letter both to like the concept of your players and also like, but you said you hated superheroes, but that's like an excellent superhero pitch.
Oh, okay, cool. I still hate them.
Okay.
I just have zero interest in that genre. I don't understand it. I'm missing that circuit in my head. It wasn't a part of my childhood. I find it a little repulsive and creepy, and I've just never got into it. And I know that every single one of my friends, and probably all three of you, love them, and that's great. And I know that there's wonderful storytelling to be done with them, but it's just not my thing.
It's totally fair.
That's cool, man. Different strokes.
Okay. And if the thing that I created as a superhero pitch is superhero-y, I'm very happy because that's what my friends are for.
So Ash has another question. She says, "Do you think that we have a responsibility as game designers to use our influence over players to influence them in moral ways?"
That's an awesome question. I love that question. Oh my God. Oh, wow. So I'm all about social engineering, right? I have ideas that I want to share with you. Games are political, right? All games are political.
Mm-hmm.
Some games are explicitly political. They want to teach you a lesson about something that the designer feels is important. So I guess if the question is, do you use the power, and it is power responsibly, yeah, I think you should. I think you should be a moral and ethical being and not socially engineer into doing shitty things or encouraging shitty behaviors. At the same time, it's out of your hands, right? You can create a beautiful interlocking jewel box of a game, but once you hand it to somebody else, they're going to do what they want with it. And this is something that I feel very deeply because some of my early games, particularly like Shab al-Hiri Roach, which was my very first published game, it's often used with the best of intentions, but it becomes an generator for shady behavior in the way that Cards Against Humanity can do that. Like you're being controlled by an evil insect and it's making you do hilarious things. Well, that can go in a lot of different ways, and some of those ways are just not that cool. And as a game designer, I don't have any control over how you choose to parse that at the table. I can say, be cool, don't do shitty things with it, but beyond that, what power do I have over your own agency? So it's a double-edged kind of thing. I keenly feel that responsibility. I want to build safety tools into my games that allow you to calibrate your experience if you use them. But if you use them is an open question, and I can't make you do anything. So yeah, I do feel. I think that as game designers, we do have some responsibility to present things that can be engaged thoughtfully and kindly and constructively. But at the same time, I don't take responsibility for someone doing a shitty thing with my game.
Yeah. It's kind of one of those things I feel like by including safety mechanics and stuff in your game, it helps almost give people a better metric for, like, say you're joining a table full of people you've never met before. If you know this game has safety mechanics and everybody else completely says, screw those, we're not playing with those, kind of gives you an idea of what kind of table this is, and you can just
Step
scoot on
away.
out because no
Yeah,
thanks.
right. Like you can just nope out of that. It also sets an expectation, and in my experience, that if you present those tools, people will latch onto them. They'll be like, "Oh, well, it's part of the game. It's like the rules of the game say we have to be kind to each other. So I guess we're going to be kind to each other." And I don't know why that works, but it totally does.
Yeah.
I do that when I run games at Games on Demand, Gen Con and Origins. I always preface it with a little speech. So like I have to explain that we're going to use the X card and so forth. But I also say that we're at table 29, and at table 29, we all trust each other and we love each other. And we're here to provide a really positive experience for one another. And we trust that other people are going to do that for us as well. And it just sets a tone. And I don't know exactly why, but it feels like weird magic because people do. People buy into that. If you just articulate that and make it like the expectation, people are like, "Oh, I gotta trust and love you guys. Okay, cool. I trust and love you," and it works. So I think that there's a level of expectation setting that you can include that's going to be effective in some cases, maybe many cases.
We have Alex in the chat. And let's see what the question is. If you ran a small museum in the middle of nowhere dedicated to a very specific subject, what would that subject be?
Before I answer this, I need to know which Alex it is.
Roberts.
Okay. Alex Roberts. My nemesis.
I mean,
it would be it would be a museum dedicated to lake monsters, Alex.
Oh, nice.
Cadborosaurus, Zeuglodons.
Do you
water
have different
horses.
wings for like cryptids and non-cryptids, or do you just have them all together and let people decide for themselves?
Oh, Aaron, that is a Bush League question. First of all, it was specifically stipulated that this is a very small museum, so it's going to be one room, probably in the back of my house. And this whole cryptid, non-cryptid discussion is really beneath my dignity, so we're just going to move on.
Wow, okay. Well, that looks like all the time we've got. See you later.
I just like saying Zeuglodon.
It's a good word.
Zeuglodon. It is a good
I'm
word.
seriously impressed that you're able to reach like several lake monsters. That was cool because I can only like 2 or 3.
It sounds like the guy who bosses the Power Rangers around.
Zeuglodon?
Yeah. Ooh, so follow-up question. So then where is our lake monster game?
I would love to make it. Let's make a lake monster game, Alex. You and me. Let's do it. It's a deal.
Shit, awesome.
And Alex, I don't want to sort of geophysically out you, but you live in prime lake monster territory, sea monster territory, really, which is pretty exciting. Probably didn't know that. Maybe you did.
Exciting.
That would be a shocking realization to realize that you're in sea monster territory without like doing that willingly.
It's true. 2 Christmases ago, on Christmas Day, I was standing near the mouth of the Altamaha River in Georgia, searching for Altamaha, which is a notorious local river monster. Did not see it, but look.
Nice.
Things are getting weirder and weirder.
That's
like
the way it goes.
This is good times. You start digging in, and you find some real good nuggets every now and then. Like a lake monster museum. You can't plan for that in a question.
I mean,
list.
really?
No,
You really can't.
But that's the sort of place you pull over for on the highway.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
And it would have to be in some landlocked place like Alberta.
Oh, yeah.
Also,
Oh,
this
yeah.
sounds like a Fiasco playset. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Yes. Oh God.
Be aware of your surroundings at all time while at the Lake Monster Museum.
While we're
It's
talking
true.
about Fiasco playsets, do you have any ones, do you have any particular favorites that you've had a hand in making, and do you have any particular favorites that were made by others?
Yes.
All right, cool. Next question.
Well, I'll tell you, one of my favorites is News Channel 6,
Okay.
which was made by three different Ken Coble, Tom Gerganis, and Chris Norwood. And that's a really fun one. You sort of play the anchorman kind of story, a bunch of idiots or in a news station, a bunch of foolish people. One that I wrote that I really like, one of my favorites is The Beast of Sucker Creek, which is about, a mysterious ape-like creature in Sucker Creek and people looking for it. And another one that I really like, Home Invasion, which is about it's basically about a homeowners association and maybe aliens, which is pretty good combo.
What?
No, I mean, that's a totally realistic combo, actually.
Yeah, it's actually up on my screen right now since we're editing all these for the new release. Here's the pitch. This is a nice neighborhood with a nice mix of families and a nice, powerful homeowners association. People who aren't afraid to tell you the blue you're painting your house isn't allowed. Judgmental rich people. But lately things have been unsettled around Poppleton Terrace. Property values are falling, crime is rising, long-time residents are grumbling, and now new people are moving in. People who are not like us at all. And all of the elements in this playset really point to these new people as being not from this earth.
Nice. Nice.
And of course, it's a hot take on xenophobia and so forth. But it's you've got aliens in the neighborhood. A classic story.
That's pretty great.
Was Beast of Sucker Creek the one we played? Where we were swamp married, I think?
Yes.
Oh, were you swamp married?
Oh yeah. Look, it was.
I think at the end I was in a relationship with the Beast, I think.
Yeah,
It
happens
went
all the
places.
time. Happens all the time. You should write a book. They sell really well on Amazon. You can self-publish.
Swamp married. God, that was great.
I'm 90% sure we streamed that like a year ago.
Time is a weird construct that really doesn't apply to much anymore. So
Yeah, the only reason I remembered like how long, like specifically when we did it, was because I was actually living at Aaron's house at the time. So there's this weird audio echo because
after
we were
the
in
flood,
the same room.
right?
That's the only reason I even remembered when it happened.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you played. That's one of my favorites.
It was a lot of fun.
It was real good.
It really just, one of the things I like about the system in general, I'm generally I like structure. I'm the type of person who likes a game that tells me like, here are the 53 things you have to do before you start. And Fiasco is not that at all. So I was really intimidated by it just because of the way that I approach things. I want to know what I'm supposed to do. But it really just throws you in kind of the best ways. And it was a lot of fun. It was really easy for me to just kind of fall into and enjoy without being kind of self-conscious about what was happening and was I doing it right. And it was just a lot of fun.
I'm so glad. That makes me feel good, Renee, because I hear that a lot, that people find it a pretty accessible game, even if it's not the sort of experience that they're used to. So that's great. I appreciate your experience there.
Do you think that games like Fiasco and like Improv for Gamers and things like that, do you think that things like that make improvisation and the various activities therein kind of more widely accessible and a little bit less terrifying of a concept, I guess, for some people?
I don't know. I think there's probably a lot more improvisers than there are extreme hyper niche nerd gamers, although maybe I'm wrong. But those techniques are really effective and they work great for me. So I would love it if either they made people more comfortable with the kind of games that I make and love, or conversely, those kinds of games sort of taught them the basics of things like agreement and endowment and heightening in a way that's productive. Yeah, I think there's a lot of well, obviously, you guys have talked to Karen. You know, there's huge, opportunities for cross pollination there, and both communities have a lot to learn from each other.
I have a very specific Kickstarter question.
Okay, I'll do my best to answer it.
Okay, you should probably be one of the only people on the planet who can answer it.
I'm liking the sound of it.
Okay. So, it looks like if somebody backs the Kickstarter at the monologuing mastermind level, they get a special edition of the game, which is buried in your backyard right now?
That is correct. It's already been sold.
Okay. Anyway, so it says there's a large envelope of stuff that comes with it.
That's true.
Since it's already been sold and I won't ever get to see it, can you tell me one of the stuffs that's in the envelope?
No.
Oh, damn.
We'll never know what the stuffs are.
I will tell you that the stuff it's similar to the Drunk Cowboy level, and the stuff that's in it is really cool. I've been collecting it for quite a while, and there's a lot of really, really interesting, weird, completely inappropriate stuff in there.
Nice.
I just pasted the Kickstarter link in the chat again, just in case anybody wants to go and check out the reward levels.
Like wear latex gloves when you open the envelope kind of stuff. Yeah, it's good. It's a good time. We had a lot of angry discussions in Bully Pulpit headquarters about what we could ship internationally and what we couldn't. And we had to adjust a little bit to accommodate the legal requirements of international shipping. There are things that you cannot ship over a border, and I had included a number of them. So.
Oh God, that's kind of funny.
It's a
surprising list too. It's a very surprising list.
So curious
now. Now I just want to go research all the things you can't ship internationally.
It's a long and very sometimes frightening specific list.
Yeah, I'm sure there's probably some. You're like, why do we even have to say this? Oh, at least one person did it.
Right. No, that's generally how that works. Somebody tried it one time and then everyone else not now.
They ruined it for the rest of us.
Pretty much.
So aside from all of the things it seems like you've kind of got going on, you're making stuff here and there and working with people and everything. What have you been playing or reading up on and enjoying recently?
Yeah, thanks for asking. That's a good question, Aaron. I'm in two groups that meet more or less weekly. We're all adults, so we like my Monday group missed this week just because a variety of things were going on. But we try to meet every week. And that group, I'll get back to that group. My other group has just wrapped up a run of Mold Bay D&D. We played 1983 Basic Dungeons and Dragons, which was really fun and super informative. We adjusted it a little bit because it's a deeply broken, stupid game. So we changed some of the mechanisms to make it more fun for us. That's a subjective assessment. If you love Mold Day D&D, that's great. I love it too. But like we leveled up every session. We didn't track experience because we knew we were only going to play for 5 or 6 weeks, and that meant that we could see sort of a broader sense of the character arc of the game rather than grinding to get to second level.
That makes a lot of sense.
And we had a good time, and and things that are real arbitrary and strange that we just laughed about, and the things that are cool about it we enjoyed. So that we did. And my other group, my Monday group, we've been playing a lot of different games. We played Kids on Bikes most recently, which was fun. I got to basically play Veronica Lodge. I was a evil, mean, rich girl, and that was really fun. Nice. And then we found it like a UFO beast man, which is pretty cool. It's all about beast and lake monsters tonight.
It is.
And then we're getting ready to play Companion's Tale, which is going to be fun. We played, and then I have a backlog of games that I need to get my friends to play with me that we're either considering publishing or that I just want to help other people play test. So there's a whole suite of those that are coming up as well.
Sounds like there's no shortage of fun times.
No, absolutely. I love my friends, and I'm so fortunate to be able to play face to face with them all the time in 2 groups. Who could ask for more? It's pretty nice.
What about 3 groups?
3 groups is too many.
Shit.
2 groups is a lot.
Yeah, that
Three-
would be a lot.
It is. It is a lot. It would be. Not going to do it.
Well, looks like we're starting to get close to an hour, so I guess if we want to do like maybe one more question from everybody, and then we'll begin our wrap up proceedings.
That sounds great.
Okay.
What are you guys playing? That's my question.
Are we talking RPGs only, or
I'm going to open that up wide.
So that I just got a game today that I really want to crack open and play with. It's called Control, and basically, you are the head of the Federal Bureau of Control, which is a government agency that has been tasked with kind of containing any spillages that happen when another reality intersects with our own.
That sounds fun.
It seems really cool. I've heard really, really good things about it from everybody, so I'm excited to play it and maybe stream it. I've been kind of working on some of my own little game stuff that's definitely nowhere near any kind of playtest phase, but it feels nice to get things on a page and feel like you're making progress sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's mostly.
How about you, Mike?
I've got Fire Emblem's 3 Heroes on Switch that I'm still making my way through. That game is adorable and also great, just fascinating. I tried to play Gloomhaven with the guys at work, the people at work every Tuesday, which isn't happening right now. And on Sundays, I got a Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars campaign that we're currently in failure to launch mode. So we're going to get that off the ground soon.
You do.
Yep, got to get season 2 of Space Wizards out.
Yes.
How about you, Renee?
Oh, well, school has started, so my games playing is too small. Video games, I'm working my way through Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is funny because I'm doing Antigone, and
Oh, nice.
and then I teach the hero's journey with my freshmen, so I have referenced this game like 35 times in the past 2 weeks. It's
You're
really
going to sell a few copies.
Yeah, it's really great. But
That's
I
good.
have a copy of For the Queen that I'm going to throw at my students on Friday, my sophomores who are
Oh,
already
that's so
kind of
good.
into RPGs, and we're going to see where that goes. So
That's going to be fun.
yeah,
That
I
would be
think
super
so.
fun.
Yeah, we got to run a like instructional play thing at PAX for the Queen, and being able to walk around to like I think it was like 13 or 14 different tables and hearing all of the stuff that was going on, and it was great because so many people started and they were just very reserved, and they were like, I don't know half the people at this table. I'm not gonna get into this. And then you come by 10 minutes later and it's like, wait a second, you said you've never seen her before, but now you're best friends from a long time ago? What's up with that? Are you lying then or are you lying now? And you're just like, yes.
That's very good.
It's so good. Excuse me. Anybody have a question?
All right, you showed us those awesome cards. I gotta ask: do you get them made, or like how do you?
Yeah, so I laid them out. I processed the art, laid them out in InDesign, and then had them turn into a PDF and printed it at Drive-Thru Cards, which I use basically as a prototyping service because you can print a single deck of cards.
Awesome.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yep, I highly recommend it.
Huh.
Excuse me.
Interesting. Okay, so I have a question. Obviously, I mean, I'm throwing For the Queen at my kids to see what happens. And I've kind of floated this question with other people before because I think that RPGs are such good ways to teach students about storytelling and characterization. So if you were going to run a game in a freshman English class, what game system would you choose?
Oh, well, I have, and I sort of made my own. which is I think is the right answer, because like you want to know the people that you're presenting this material to. So yeah, in my case, it just made sense to sort of custom build a thing that was it's going to meet the exact requirements for that. I've built EduLARP kinds of games as well that are designed to be used in the classroom, that are sort of live action games. But yeah, it's always custom for me. I don't know if I were going to take a game off the shelf for a class of 20 sophomores. I don't know. I would make a LARP, or I would look at LARP for sure. That's what I would do.
All
And if you want to talk more about that, maybe we can talk later.
There you go.
LARP scales super well to a large group like that, and there are games that work for classroom size cohorts pretty well, and can teach cool stuff.
Like archery.
I don't think we can bring that on campus.
Not what I was thinking, but okay.
Okay. Any final questions burning in anyone's mind?
Sounds like no.
Okay. Well,
This has been fun.
this has.
This is great.
What we normally do is give you the first outro spot, let you just plug whatever you want, and then at the end, if you would be so willing to give a non-capitalist shout out, and then we'll do our outro stuff.
I don't know what a non-capitalist shout out.
Like something that doesn't cost money. So like sometimes people are like, "Hey, hug a friend" or something.
Oh,
or,
okay. All right. Sure. Sounds good. Yeah, so my shout out would be, or my plug would be, of course, for the Fiasco Kickstarter. If you go to Kickstarter and look for Fiasco, you will find it, and you can see all the cool stuff that we're offering, and all the changes we've made, and hopefully that you will be excited by that, as I am. And as I was saying earlier, support other people and be kind to them. That is the best thing you can do, and it costs you nothing.
Absolutely. Mike?
I got nothing to plug, but my non-capitalist, my words are failing me tonight, but be excellent to each other. As Gilles Preston and Ted Theodore Logan once said.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Renee?
As usual, my call is to always patronize your local libraries. They have lots more than books there.
I saw a picture of one online. They rent out funny shaped cake pans, so you can make like
awesome.
cool project cakes and not have to buy a pan you'll never use more than once.
That's fantastic.
I thought that was rad.
Yeah.
All right, so we have been some of the folks from That D&D podcast. If you want to follow us, you can do so by looking up That D&D podcast. That's the letter N and not an apostrophe on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Patreon, at Gmail if you want to send us an email. You can go to thatdndpodcast.com and catch 5 years of us doing various shenanigans. It's a lot at times. And
It's a lot.
We played Fiasco 6 times. I went through the archive and counted.
Yep, there you
Nice.
go. And for my non-capitalist shout out of the day, take the time to put down your phone or whatever, and have like just a real face-to-face focused conversation with somebody if you can today. That little bit of contact may make their day, it may make your day, and you may learn something cool. So we'll see you all around. Thank you again, Jason, for coming to hang out. And
My pleasure.
Best of luck with the Kickstarter.
Thanks.
Fiasco's rad as hell, and more people should have it in their hands.
Thanks very much. It's lovely to meet y'all.
You too.